Tom took the event of being made redundant and said, that is not the end of my life. And he embraced that event and put it into the process of living. And unless we learn how to take events and put them into the process of living, we will be event-minded people. And you'll be hoping and a praying and a waiting and a dreaming for the next event for your whole life. But you need to become a process-minded believer that says any event that happens to me is not my life, does not define my life, and my life is not a series of events, it's a process in which every day the light gets brighter, every day I learn a little more, every day I live a little more. We have to stop being roller coaster Christians and start walking in the Spirit. Nowhere does the Bible say sprint in the Spirit and then collapse at the end. It says to walk in the Spirit. That's something you can do every day, isn't it? And so two Christians both go to heal the nations. And heal the nations, we were talking about healing nations. And I want to recap all the awesome messages. They've all been recorded. And we did the recording this time. It was in-house, so we've got the recordings. They will all be on our website, free of charge. But, so, you're being told to heal the nations. Maybe God spoke to you and said, you're going to preach. Maybe God spoke to you and said, you're going to prosper. Maybe God spoke to you and said, you're going to heal the sick. Whatever it was. So these two guys go to heal the nations, and God speaks to both of them and says, you're going to have a healing ministry. Let's pick on a healing ministry, okay? You're going to have a great healing ministry. God speaks to them. Whether God speaks to them direct in the worship, whether Dave Duell prophesied it over them, or whether just during the preaching, they went, that's me. I'm going to heal the sick. I'm going to do what Ben does. I'm going to do what Dave does. I'm going to do these things. So the first guy, Tim, that was an event in his life. So he's now looking for another event. He's waiting for pastor to give him a healing ministry. He's waiting for me to get in the pulpit one Sunday and say, man, I'm shad. You preach. He's living from event to event. And in 6 months, nothing has happened. So he's now frustrated. I thought I was going to get this. I thought this was going to happen. I drove halfway across the country for that stupid conference. So the only thing he can do is get another event. So what's he going to do? He's going to drive halfway across the country the other way for another stupid conference. But this time, he's not going to choose a good conference like ours. And ours was a good conference. Because the people there were sold out about equipping you and teaching you. Even Will preached it not once but twice. It's one person at a time. It's one day at a time. He was saying the same thing I'm saying, just using slightly different language. You can't heal the nations till you heal yourself, your family, your community, one person at a time. What's he saying? What's Will saying? Is we can go rah, rah, event. But unless there's a process that's ongoing, it's a waste of time. So rather than go to a good conference like ours where he hears good teaching like that, he goes to a nutty prophetic conference. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those. So let me describe what happens. Tim, halfway through the conference, pays £25 to get a personal prophetic word from the man of God. And so he gets this prophetic word from the man of God, the £25 prophetic word from the man of God, and it will go something like this. And this, brother, is the year of the open door for you. And this is the year that you will be blessed and you will be fruitful. And I see a season of great increase coming your way. That's pretty much word for word what it will be. And so he leaves the conference, happy now he's had another event. Happy now, he's excited. He's heard all the cliches. So now he becomes a business pastor. I want to do this. And I will tell you, as the pastor of this church, as the good shepherd, get involved. Join a living church and get involved. Join a rota and start serving. Become part of the process of the growth of Tree of Life. No. I'm waiting for the event, brother. I'm waiting for the open door that was prophesied over me. Sweeping up after church, putting stuff away in a cupboard is not the open door. Being faithful and consistent and there all the time, that's not what God was speaking to me about. And in 6 months' time, this guy is only coming to church every 3 or 4 weeks. And he's looking for another conference. Because he needs another event. You see, the way to promotion is process. We all made a big deal at the conference about the fact that Joel got 16 billion A stars in his GCSEs. That was an event. That happened in one day. He didn't have a certificate with those A stars, and then he did. Boom, event. But let me tell you, that event did not happen without a process before it. And if he just sits on his backside for the rest of his life, woo, look at me, I got 8 stars. I was in the local paper. You know, when you're 35 and looking for a new job, nobody cares how many A stars you have. Sorry to break it to you, kids, but that's the fact. I know your teacher said if you misbehave on Tuesday, it's going to be in your permanent record. There's no such thing. You've got to take these events and put them in the process. You've got to take the event and put them in the process. You've got to take Heal of Nations and put it in the process of your life. You've got to be a process person. You've got to be a walking day-by-day person. I didn't ask Adam to get up and speak today because he's got half my DNA and is therefore the best looking face in the church to look at besides mine. I asked him because he's on the process. And he's here before you. And he's setting stuff up that you don't know about. And he's involved in the process. And so there's always a process. But the problem is the process is generally invisible. All we see is the moment of release. And we don't realize the process that's taken to that point. Somebody said to me at Heal the Nations, man, your church has just come out of nowhere. I was meant from your point of view, yeah. From my point of view, it's come out of blood and sweat and tears and more tears and more tears. Because it's a process. You can't do anything worthwhile in the kingdom without a process. So here's Tim going home looking for another conference. No, I don't need to serve. I don't need to get involved in the process. I just need another event. I just need another conference. And while he's hunting for the magic wand that's going to give him what he wants, there's hurting people all around that need healing, but he doesn't notice them because he's not in the process. Whereas the other guy, Tom, he goes, well, okay, I've got a great healing ministry coming up. I better get involved. God's called me to pastor a church. I better find out what happens first thing when the doors open. I'll be here at 8. And as he's here at 8, he's talking to somebody else who's here at 8, and that person says, man, I'm having a tough time. I've got this condition. I've got this problem. I'm suffering here. Can I pray with you? And the person gets healed. And at the same time, Tom's at Living Church week after week after week. And one week he gets a word. And because he's there week after week, he's credible. And the elder says, share it. And the word's awesome. And so I go to the elders meeting, and one of the elders says to me, Tom is awesome. Man, that guy speaks, and there's life to it, and there's fire to it. And because that's an elder of the church telling me about someone committed to Living Church, he's now credible to me. So I say, Tom, fancy coming to Watford with me? I was going to say I'm preaching in front of half a dozen people at Watford, but Watford's over 20 people now. It's just been wonderful what's happened there. So Tom now preaches in Watford. All our best guys started off in Watford, man. We just take them to Watford, get them a go. Eric's preaching in Watford soon. Looking forward to that. Michelle did her first singing in Watford. It's part of a process. Well, I don't want to go to Watford. I just want to be here in front of everyone. Well, that's fine. You've now short-circuited the process. You've lost your credibility with me. And so you get involved in the process, and suddenly you're now speaking on a Sunday. And suddenly one of the invites I get invited to, I phone the pastor and I say, listen, I can't make it that week. But there's a guy, Tom, in my church, and he's good. And because he's got credibility with me, he's now got credibility with that pastor. And he goes and preaches in the other church, and he just knocks them down. And what happens next? There's somebody in that church who's a pastor from another nation. But that didn't happen. And all the while Tom is increasing, and all the while Tom's ministry is taking off, Tim's still sitting there waiting for another conference. Because he never got involved in the process. Everything that happened at conference has to be brought into the process of your life, or within 6 weeks it will be gone. It will be as if the conference never happened. We are either event-driven people or process-driven people. And God wants you to be process-driven people. Because it's only in the process is there fruitfulness. And today, I've set aside today for one purpose. To help you transition from being an event addict, a conference junkie. It's been too long between hits. I need another conference. To deliver you from the prophetic drug pushers. You see, the problem is we live in an age, 21st century age, where we glorify the event. We hate slow processes. And I'm all for efficiency. I'm all for doing things as quickly and as well as possible. But let's just admit right now, there are some things cannot be done in a day. They have to be done daily. The drama of the conference must be put into the process of life. I thank God for the conference. I thank God so much for the conference. Every healing, every encounter, every event, every word, every prophecy. I thank God for all of it. A conference is an awesome place to have your faith lifted and make a decision. It is an awesome place. But if you expect the conference, if you expect any conference, even one as wonderful as Heal the Nations, to do what only a process can do, you will always be disappointed, because it cannot. The event must work with process. Your Bibles are open, so let's turn to Matthew 7. Verse 15. Beware of false prophets. Jesus wouldn't say beware of them if they weren't out there. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing. Notice, false prophets don't turn up in shepherd's clothing. They don't come to town and start churches. They start splitting groups. They go to church, but they prophesy over people in the car park. They give you secret prophecies that no one knows about, because you're so special. They don't pastor people. They're not there when your marriage breaks up and you've got to phone someone at 2 in the morning. They don't come and pray with you when your baby's sick. They come in sheep's clothing and they start these things and they start everything but the church, and they get involved with everything but church. Beware of them. Inwardly they're ravening wolves. You will know them by what? By fruit. Do you see an apple tree and suddenly an apple appears? No, it's a process. Fruit is always a process. Being fruitful is always a process. Do men gather grapes of thorns and figs of thistles? Every good tree brings forth good fruit. A corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. Let's just skip forward to verse 21. Verse 20 says, by their fruits you shall know them. Verse 21 says, not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied? Event. In your name. And in your name we cast out devils. Event. And in your name done miracles. Event. Events won't get you into the kingdom of heaven. Process will. I don't want to break that down anymore, but that's the truth. You need a process, and if you don't work with the process, you'll always be disappointed. Events. They did all those mighty events, and they didn't even know Jesus. And you can prove they didn't know Jesus, and you can prove they weren't born again, because you'd have to not be born again to stand in front of Jesus and go, let me into heaven, because I've healed the sick and cast out devils. I mean, you'd have to be so dumb and so ignorant of the gospel to even think that's what gets you into heaven. There's only one way into heaven, and that's through his precious blood, through his grace and goodness, through the fruit that comes only from abiding in him and living in the vine. There is no event that will get you into heaven. It's got to be the process. We've got to build our lives on the process. Success can be an event. Getting a promotion at work is an event. But that promotion didn't happen without process, did it? Debt. Let's just talk about money for a second. Debt is a process. Somebody's tell me what the time is. 37, plenty of time. Debt is a process. You might have a debt event in your life where you borrow a bunch of money, but generally debt is a process. And you see, the thing is, because you got into debt via a process, you're not going to get out of debt via an event. I hate to break you from some of the conference preachers, you're not going to get out of debt because of one event, because you gave him one offering. By wisdom a house is built. That's not one event, it's a process. There is no miracle cure for debt, there's just a process. In that process there may be miracle events. I'm not against miracle events, I'm not against miracle money, but unless you go through the process, unless you walk in the wisdom of it, someone will give you the money and you'll end up more in debt than you were before you got the money. Getting out of debt, and God wants you out of debt, but it's a process. A process got you in debt, a process will get you out of it. And that's why there's certain conference speakers who I avoid like the plague. They'd get big crowds. We'd have a great meeting, but it wouldn't help you bear fruit. I said yesterday when I was preaching that all the other guys who came, all the other speakers, were uncles to this network. But my role is the father. And I said that's sometimes awkward because uncles are cool. You know, my brother comes over and, oh man, look at that, he's bought me a bar of chocolate. Uncle's the best, he bought me a bar of chocolate. Your room, your clothes, your iPhone. You know, there's this, but you see, sometimes you get bad uncles. They just don't just buy the kid a chocolate, they buy them so many chocolates they throw up. You know, I was talking to a guy recently, and when he was 14, his uncle would go and buy him cigarettes. He thought uncle was awesome. Because the uncle's not mum and dad. Mum and dad want you to be part of the process. Mum and dad know a Snickers is okay. It's okay to have a Mars bar, as long as it's in the process of a healthy diet. But you see, sometimes we go to these conferences, and what we get fed is junk food, and it's very exciting. It's a lot of fun to be told, you are going to have a miracle increase. And yet I'm sitting in the same conference as the pastor, as the father, and I think, if that guy got a miracle increase, that would be the worst thing that happened to him. Not John Tinker's sitting at the front, but I mean, sometimes I've seen people get prophecies, I think, if that happens, that's the worst thing that can happen to that person right now. That person had a great healing ministry. That person had a great healing ministry, I'll kill him. Because I know there's a process. And so some of those guys, they're just not coming because they're bad uncles. You need to take every event in your life and bring it into the process. Whether it's a good event, a bad event, any event. Every event has to come in the process. An event without process will never shape your life. I know people right now who have been cured of incurable diseases by God in a meeting, in an event, who are not walking with God today. I know graduates from Bible college who are not walking with God today. I know someone who was raised from the dead who's not living for God today. Because they never took the event and put it into the process. You've got to take the event and put it into the process. You see, the Israelites in the desert lived an event life. They got up and there was manna, event. Hey, I got manna, miracle. They followed the pillar, an event. They never entered the promised land. Because they never developed the faith. Events are useless. If manna from heaven is useless to get you into the promised land, then Robert's manna from heaven, Robert Marsback's amazing messages, are also useless in getting you into your promised land unless you bring them into the process. Let's turn to John 5 for a second. Let's look at some of this. Not a difficult message today, it's simple. You've got to be part of a process. First step to your dream doesn't look like your dream. John 5, verse 1. After this, there was a great feast of the Jews, and Jesus went to Jerusalem. Now there is a Jerusalem by the sheep market, a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. And in these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and troubled the water. The first, after troubling the water, stepped in and was whole of whatever disease he had. Why were they at the pool? For an event. They were looking for an event that would solve all their problems instantly. And Jesus saw him lying, knew he'd been there a long time in that case. He said to him, "Will you be made whole?" Jesus walked up to him and said, "Do you want to be well?" Sounds like a dumb question to ask a sick person. Some sick people don't want to be well. I prayed for a guy a number of years ago. I was preaching at a series of healing meetings at a local Assemblies of God church. This guy sat in the front row with crutches. When you're preaching on healing, there's someone sitting on the front row in crutches, it kind of draws your attention. So on the third night of this healing crusade, every night I'd gone home and prayed for wisdom what to do with the guy with the crutches. And he never came forward to the healing line once. So the third day, just as I was worshipping in the service, the keyboard was playing, whatever else, and I was worshipping God, I had a picture in my mind of me grabbing the guy's hand and saying, "Run!" So when I got the pulpit, I grabbed the guy's hand and I said, "Run!" And I pulled him up onto his feet. He hadn't walked unaided for 15 years. And he stood there. I said, "Run!" He went, "No." I said, "Run!" He said, "No." I said, "Run!" He said, "No." And he sat back down. I had to close the meeting down. There's not much you can do after that. I went home and it wrecked me. Still a young guy, very young at the time. I must have been 19, 20 years old. Maybe 21. 21, let's say 21, shall I? It makes you feel better. And I went home and I cried. And I was married at the time, and man said, "What's wrong?" I said, the guy, I was just spent 2 or 3 days just like a zombie. I saw it, but it never happened. I saw it so clearly. Man said, I spoke to him after the meeting. I said, "Did you?" He said he'd been in constant pain. His knees had been in constant pain for 15 years. Every movement was painful. Standing up was agony. He said, and as I took his hand and stood him up, he had no pain for the first time in 15 years. And he knew if he ran, he'd be fine, he'd be healed. And he started thinking, well, I don't want to get a job. I don't want to lose my benefits. I don't want my wife to lose the fact she's my carer. I don't know what I'd do in my life, I haven't got any skills. And he thought himself right out of his healing and sat back down. And God won't force on you what you don't want. Because God's a gentleman. Not everyone wants to be healed. But Jesus said, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed? I think Jesus looked at the guy and thought, no, I can't see it here, but isn't there somewhere? Yeah, here it is. Yeah, it's verse 5. He'd been there 38 years. First one into the water gets healed. And he's been there 38 years. And Jesus thought, how come you were never first? Man, in 38 years, everyone you got beat every time. Do you even want to get healed? I've got no man. I've got nobody to get. I heard again. You can't walk. I'd have crawled. I'd have begged. I'd have dragged. I'd have done anything. I'd have screamed and screamed and screamed till somebody dragged me. Just put me there right by the edge. I'll just sit right here. As soon as the water moves, I'm rolling in. Give me a stick as well. Anyone comes near, I'm first this time. Next time's your time. Been here 33 years, man. 38 years, just you even want to get healed. You're like, yeah, I do. I've got no one to help me. He's looking for an event to put me in the pool, and while I'm coming, someone else steps in before me. Jesus said to him, get up, take your bed and walk. And immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked, and the same day was the Sabbath. But just skip forward to verse 14. Jesus found him. After Jesus found the temple and said, behold, you are made whole. The event's happened. But sin no more, in case something worse happens. What's Jesus saying? He's saying, take this miracle, take this encounter with me, and put it in the process. Don't go back to living the life you lived before you had the encounter. Don't go back to being the same person, thinking the same things, watching the same things, listening to the same things, but change your whole life. Because clearly there was something in that guy's life that made him sick, and if he stayed living the same life, it would just make him sick again. I was once at a healing meeting. I saw a lady healed of diabetes. We came out of the meeting into the foyer, and she was stuffing the biggest bit of chocolate cake you could find into her mouth. The healing was an event, but it wasn't in the process. Man. Turn me to Luke 11. Some of you got freedom at the conference. Some of you got freedom. Hallelujah. Luke 11:24. When an unclean spirit has gone out of a man, he walks through dry places, seeking rest, and finds none. He says, I'm going to come back to the house where I came out. And when he comes, he finds it swept and garnished, and he goes in, takes 7 spirits more wicked than himself, enters in and lives there, and the last state of that man's worse than the first state. What does that happen? He got delivered, he got set free, he got freedom, but never put it into the process of his life. He said, that's the high point of my life, not the starting point of my new life. So the demons came back. I don't want you to be in a worse place in 2 months' time than what you are now. I want you to keep your freedom. I want you to keep your healing. So take the event and put it into the process. Just go forward a little bit. Verse 29 of Luke 11. When the people were gathered thick together, he said, this is an evil generation. You seek a sign. You're looking for an event. It is an evil generation that lives by events. Runs from conference to conference, from preacher to preacher. The charismatic church in the United Kingdom is conference-led, not spirit-led. We're media-led. Well, that's what the latest book says. Oh, that's what that TV station says what the glory is. That's where we're all going to go. Where's the glory now? Oh, the glory's ended there. Where's the glory now? Oh, what's on the TV now? Come on, that. No sign will be given, except the sign of Jonah. What was Jonah? He went to Nineveh to preach. It's the word that enables you to take the event and turn it into a process. God created the world in 6 days, event after event, creation after creation. He didn't introduce Adam until day 6, until all the events had happened. God could have created Adam at the very beginning. And Adam could have stood there and watched God create the flowers, and watched God create the birds, and watched God create the stars. But God brought Adam into a world that was already in process. Because he wanted Adam to know that the process is more important than the event. The process is more important than the event. And Adam walked with God in the cool of the day. He didn't visit God every evening and join God's prayer line. He walked with God in the cool of the day. Do you see the difference? He wasn't looking for an event with God, he was looking for a process, a walk, a life. He watched the fruit grow slowly. He watched the flowers unfurl slowly. He watched the baby lambs grow slowly. And he realized that his walk with God, his fruitfulness and multiply on the planet, would be a process. And walk with God and enjoyed God's company. He wasn't hunting for another preacher to lay hands on him and give him a slap. And God parented Adam by process. And if you're a parent in the house today, you should parent by process. A lot of parents try and parent by event. Right, we're going to go to Disneyland. Right, we're going to do this. Right, we're going to do this. Those events are awesome. They enrich your parenting. But unless they're in the process of relationship, they mean nothing to your children. People talk about spoiled children, don't they? If the parents are rich and give things to their children, these children are spoiled. Children are not spoiled by giving them gifts. You are free to bless your children as much as you're financially capable. Spoiling them is not giving them gifts. It's giving them gifts out of process, of relationship with them. It's giving them gifts as a substitute for you. It's parenting by event, not process. And God parents us by process. He's given us a great event in Heal the Nations. That's like our trip to Disneyland. But if Disneyland ends and the relationship with the parent ends, that's a bad parent. And God's saying, I'm as much here for you right now as I am when Robert Marsback is unfurling the mysteries of the world to you. I'm as much here now as when Dave Dewell is chopping you and pulling on you. I'm as much with you in the cool of the garden. I'm as much with you when you go back to work on Tuesday and you're doing this and doing that. I'm as much with you when you're sitting at home as I am at the conference. Because the conference is just part of the process. And if we remember that and walk that out, everything that God wanted to do in the conference will be permanent fruit. And some of you went, I didn't go. We'll go next year, man. Don't miss out because it was awesome. Ask anyone who was there, they will tell you we had the most phenomenal positive feedback. But you have events in your life, whether you came to Heal the Nations or not. Whatever those events are, good or bad, you have to learn how to put them into process. A lot of marriages fail because it was all about the wedding day, an event. Well, I need these almonds, and I need the tablecloth to be this colour, not this colour. I've got to invite all of them as well as them and them. And you spend $20,000 on your wedding day, and you start the process of marriage £20,000 in debt. It's supposed to be the happiest day of my life. It is going to be one of the happiest days of your life. Therefore, who cares what colour wallpaper you have, what colour the bridesmaids are wearing? Who cares what you have? You're marrying the person of your dreams. You're entering into a process which is going to be till death do you part. So don't overspend and make the thing ridiculous. We've been fooled by our event-driven culture. And we look at the latest celebrities in Hello Magazine and Goodbye Magazine and all the other magazines. Man, I'd love to have a wedding like her. Really? Because it only lasted 5 months. The quality of the event does not determine the power of the process. Amanda and I, we had nothing when we got married. I had £25 to buy wedding rings. Buy 2 wedding rings for £25, is it possible? We were standing in the middle of a shop in Cardiff, and there's a jewellery store, they're closing down sale. And they had a man's wedding ring for sale, £15, reduced from £150 to £15. So I went and said, why is that wedding ring 90% off? What's wrong with it? They said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's the last one. It's quite a particular size. I said, can I try it on? It fitted perfectly. It doesn't fit perfectly anymore. But it did back then. I said, well, we can get 1 wedding ring, Amanda. And we went in there, and as we went into the shop, there was a tray of women's wedding rings for £20, any wedding ring, on the table as we were buying my one. And Amanda went, I really like that one. I was like, I don't even have £20, Amanda, I've got £10. And the lady heard me, and she said, is this your wedding? I said, yes. She goes, if that one fits, it's the only one we have, if that one fits, you can have it for £10. It fitted perfectly. And we had a friend of mine who was in a top 40 band. He came, did the music for free. Another friend came and cleaned out the place. Man, we got married in a little wooden hut, but I tell you what, we've been married nearly 19 years now. Amen. I'd rather have the process than the event any day. You've got to take the event and put it in the process. This is foundational. Let's go to Matthew 7. I'll close with this. I'll try and close with this. What's the time? That's fantastic. Fantastic. Matthew 7. Let's go to verse 24. Now, just to give you a little bit of a lesson, most should know this. Matthew 7 comes after Matthew 6 and Matthew 5. That's normally called the Sermon on the Mount. It's Jesus' conference. These guys have just been at Jesus' conference. And Jesus has been preaching message after message. Man, that would have been a great conference to be to. He starts off with a high note, talk about being blessed. He gets some good challenging stuff in there about not coming indulgent, not lusting, and not stealing and stuff. He talks about how to pray. There's a lesson on how to fast. Man, that's a great conference. It's a good conference. He's preaching away. This is how he finishes up his conference. Verse 24. Therefore, whoever hears these sayings, whoever went to the conference and does them, I will liken to a wise man who builds his house on the rock. And everyone that hears these sayings and does them not shall be a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. Verse 28, and it came to pass when Jesus had ended his sayings, when the conference was over, people were astonished at his doctrine. You see, they came away from the conference and said, what an amazing conference. But the question isn't, was the conference amazing? The question is, will you put it into practice? Will you do the things you've heard? Will you take it and put it into your foundation, into your process? And the reason you need to take the event of the conference and put it into your process and do what you were told by God to do and get involved with what God has inspired you is because the next event coming to your life may not be a great conference. The next event may be a storm. And if you can't put the conference into the process, how are you going to put the storm into the process? And the rain came down. And the floods came up. And the only difference between the two people who both went to the conference was one of them put it into practice and got in the process. They both had the same conference. They both heard the same preaching. They both went through the same storm. See, what a storm does, what rain does, is it reveals the fruit of the seed that you've sown. I can't go down that line any longer, unfortunately. James says that you're blessed in what you do if you do the word. There's a storm coming. Everyone's going to have a storm at some point in your life. You need a foundation. How do you get a foundation? You take these events and put them in the process. The way I hear some Christians talk nowadays, and I don't think it's an endemic problem to hear, but I need you to hear it, is I think some Christians have two gods. And they've got the God that they bring to church on Sunday, and the God they bring to the conference. Because the conference God will zap you and shock you. But the God at church says, hey, you need to grow up. You need to take responsibility for your own actions. The conference God prophesies random blessings over you. The church God says you need to help some people and do some stuff and love some people. The church God is your Father. The conference God sometimes seems more like Father Christmas. The conference God takes you away from your home and your family to be in ministry. Whereas a church, we say, hey, home and family is more important than ministry. The conference God doesn't like process. The God of church says if you fail to grasp the importance of process, you'll never have a life-changing event because it'll just verge away. And that adventure approach actually damages the reputation of the church. Because we put someone under church discipline because of whatever they've done, and we're helping that person work out their salvation with fear and trembling. But then they go to some church over the road and they get welcomed as a great speaker. So many Christians are hunting for revival. They're looking for an event. They're looking to turn up at church and suddenly there's 600 extra people all on their faces begging God to forgive them. We're never going to grow the church that way. How are we going to do it? One person at a time. And helping those people embrace the process. And growing that way. That's the will of God for us. That's the way we need to go. That's what God wants us to know today. There's not a second God at the conference. Yes, God will do great things at conferences. Yes, the setting aside a whole day to listen to the word every so often is a good thing. Yes, conferences are a good thing. But they will never replace the process. You have to do what's happened at the conference. And if you do that, then the high life of the conference will become the new life for the rest of your life. And the next conference will take us higher. I used to go to a conference every single year. I won't name the conference, I won't name the ministry that had it. There used to be 4,000 people at this conference. It would start on a Saturday night, and every Saturday night the preacher responsible would preach a message which was basically get right with God, repent of everything you've done wrong all year, and get yourself in a place where you can actually receive. And this conference would last from Saturday to Saturday. And that first message used to make no sense to me because I was living it. All year. I didn't give up on God because I wasn't at the conference. And then it gets for the first 3 days, whoever was preaching, there'd be this lone voice going, "Amen! Come on!" And it wasn't until Thursday or Friday that other people joined in. Because it took them a whole week to catch up with all the stuff they'd missed out on all year. I don't want that to be our conference. There's a couple in this room, I won't name them, but they blessed me so much at Grace and Faith conference this year. Because I saw them at the end of the conference and I was like, hasn't it been a beautiful conference? And they said the most beautiful thing to us about this conference is we now know we're going back to a local church. Where we're getting fed and helped all the time. I had to make my sharp exit to avoid my tears being shown by people. Because that to me is the greatest honour we can have. It's not that we've put on a great event, but that we've put people into a great process. Because God doesn't want you to have an eventful life. He wants you to have a fruitful life. Amen. Let's stand to our feet, shall we? I really hope this has helped today. Godfrey. I've just been reminded by my executive pastor and one of the trustees of the church that we need to receive an offering.